The new Navy shipbuilding plan plots out a fleet that could wind up anywhere from 320 to more than 500 ships. The Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Michael Gilday, said this week, though, the Navy can only afford a 300-ship fleet with the budget it has now. But the Navy should go back to the 80s to strategize its future fleet, according to Congresswoman Elaine Luria. She's vice chair of the House Armed Services Committee and a retired Navy surface warfare officer. She's writing about naval fleet strategy in War on the Rocks. Madam Vice Chair, welcome. It's great to have you on the program. You write in this piece, I've sought to determine the Navy's current global maritime strategy. What I've discovered is that it does not exist. That sounds like a tremendous problem, Madam Vice Chair.
Well, you know, as a lawmaker and as one who has to make these tough decisions on how we spend taxpayer dollars to defend our nation, I feel that the Navy has a goal. They have a goal of 355 ships. That includes 11 aircraft carriers. But truly there isn't a strategy where they can come explain to Congress, to the American people, the importance of our Navy and the importance of forward presence overseas, the emerging and urgent threat that we need to respond to relative to Chinese activities in the Western Pacific, the South China Sea. And I think it's time to go back to like Secretary Lehman did under the Reagan administration and really have a global strategy that the administration, that Congress, that the American people are behind to build the Navy that our nation needs.
What was most striking to me about the explanation that you gave in this piece about what happened in the 1980s under Secretary Lehman was this. The strategy document, the 80s maritime strategy, developed in just 3 weeks using briefing slides and speaking notes. It takes a lot longer than that to develop anything in the Pentagon now, it seems. Am I reading it wrong?
It is surprising looking back on that history and actually speaking to the authors of that strategy recently to understand how quickly they were able to put the pieces together. But the Soviet Union was a threat that we could quantify, and we knew that we needed forces in the North Atlantic, in the Mediterranean, and the Western Pacific. And putting that all together, how many carrier strike groups would that be? How many ships would that be? And really putting the entire industrial base behind building those ships. And we got pretty darn close, 597, before the Cold War came to an end.
Is it reasonable to substitute China today for the Soviet Union then? Because you ask in this piece, or you write, U.S. maritime leaders need to answer the question, how would the U.S. Navy deter or defeat Chinese naval aggression? They're certainly not shy about demonstrating their new naval capabilities.
I certainly think that China is the pacing threat. I certainly think that there would be other malign actors who would respond in this scenario. And we look at our national defense strategy. It says defeat in one theater, deter elsewhere. I don't think we've clearly defined that deter elsewhere. The importance of the freedom of the seas for our trade, for our commerce, for our economy, and really to protect American values cannot be overstated. And just look at what happened this week recently with Russia's claimed interactions with the British Navy in waters near Crimea. This is only going to escalate in various areas of the world, including the Arctic as well, where I have a lot of concerns.
You write about how your graduation from the Naval Academy in 1997, 20-year Navy career, and you point out that the Zumwalt and Ford class ships the program started before you graduated from the academy, ma'am, and neither one of them has deployed. You describe this as a lost generation. How do we make that up? Given that we are where we are, we can't change the past, how do we make up that time, ma'am?
Well, I think we need to build the ships that we can build today. If we look at this budget proposal, it actually builds one less destroyer, and the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer is a ship that we've been able to build over decades, reliably, on time, on budget for the most part. And so the idea that we'd be cutting the possibility of a ship that we have the capacity to build this year. And then, the budget also proposes decommissioning multiple cruisers. The Aegis cruisers, the Ticonderoga-class cruisers, are aging. They need modernizations, which cost money. But the cost of that cost of modernization is significantly less than building another ship, and we don't even have the capacity to build that ship. So we need to build more. We need to stop decommissioning ships faster than we can build new ones. And we also need to look in depth at how we can maintain and deploy our ships as efficiently as possible. So I think there are ways to effectively increase the size of the Navy by getting more out of the fleet that we have. If we can put investments in the back end, in maintenance and training and other things that I think can provide a more efficient fleet in the way we deploy it.
How much of the focus should be on quantity and how much should be on capabilities in determining exactly what has to happen in those theaters of operation that you referenced earlier, ma'am?
Well, I think presence matters. We have to be in their backyard. I would applaud both the former and current administration for continuing the pressure of freedom of navigation operations in the area. That's U.S. vessels going through international waters that are improperly claimed by other nations. But we have to keep the pressure on as far as presence. So numbers do matter. And the current budget, which has a goal of divesting of ships platforms that we have today that they call legacy platforms in order to invest in the future, it's really short-sighted, because today we need that capability. And the Trump administration put out Battle Force 2045, which was a future plan for the Navy decades out, which of course we have to plan for the future, but we cannot overlook today. Both the incoming and outgoing commanders of the U.S. Pacific Command, Admirals Davidson and Aquilino, came before the Senate and said, within 6 years, within this window, China could invade Taiwan. And this year, the Chief of Naval Operations, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, just reconfirmed that in our House Armed Services hearings. And, we have to have that sense of urgency, and that sense of urgency means we need to build what we can today. We need to keep what we have today, and we need to keep up that presence around the world where it matters.
Madam Vice Chair, thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.